So, censorship and anime translation. This has been a pretty hot topic here for the last week or so, I want to say. I know there was a popular stream that Asmongold and a few of them that he's been reacting to this and giving his take on it, and I cannot say how much I agree with him. And I'm going to discuss this a little bit because I think it's an interesting issue to discuss, and it's an important conversation to have. So if you haven't seen this yet, I'm sure you have. Everybody's seen it. It's basically some of these people who are famous for doing translating work for different animes, and they're on this panel, and they're kind of getting questioned about some of the criticisms that they've been receiving about changing the translated work by this gentleman that approaches them.
Dragon Maid Localizer gets asked about how she responds to all the criticism regarding the localization.
Okay.
Well, I'm kind of scared to ask this question now because I don't want to bring down the room. So
okay.
this is
Uh-oh.
directed at Jamie, but all of you can answer.
Go,
all of
Jamie,
you
go. I'm
have,
excited
Uh-oh.
about it. Like,
So
I'm
Funimation
Jamie.
has come under, let's call it criticism for how they choose to adapt their scripts for
like
a couple of
unnecessary
shows.
hate. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, fairly.
Thank you.
So how would you like to respond to that kind of criticism?
To the
particularly-
criticism, like, I have a vagina, deal with it. Like, I'm a funny woman. We are all talented, funny, powerful women. We are out here. It's going to happen. Deal with it. I'm sorry you're not getting laid. It's not about you. Move on. That's my reaction.
So this is a person that made the comment, and they said, just remember, if there is there are any line changes in any anime, any script, anything ever that offend anyone who unironically uses a term like SJW and feminist agenda, I wrote them. I wrote them all. Yep. Well, now you're getting replaced by a robot. So I hope you had fun. I hope it was enjoyable. Yeah, there it is.
Like, already starts with unnecessary hate, right? And it's people just giving their opinion. I don't think it's unnecessary hate. Like, this is just so stupid. I don't even honestly feel like it deserves being addressed. It's just, oh, deal with it. I have a vagina. Oh, you don't get laid. That's just like a straw man argument. That's just like trying to shit on someone's, saying that basically everybody that feels this way is an incel. Like, that's not true, man. Like, God, I don't even want to get into this subject, but I hate this way of thinking so much. I hate this worldview so much, and this attitude of, like, it's just an entitled way of thinking. It's like, oh, you're floating above the rest of us. You're a powerful woman, this and this. Like, man, like, we're all equal, man. We're all normal. We're all not that important. We're not as important as we think we are. Like, stop trying to make yourself seem like you're some sort of goddess above the clouds, man. It's just criticism towards your work. God, like, if I were to have taken every criticism I've ever received in my life, not just here on YouTube, but in general personally, I think I would just crumble in a little ball in the corner and just die, man. Like, criticism towards your work or what you're putting out is not always a personal attack, man. Sometimes it is just unnecessary hate, but if so many people are saying the same thing, there might be a tone of truth in there. And it's just so, this is such, like, immature, childish behavior. You know, somebody makes a criticism and says, hey, you shouldn't be translating the work to push your worldview or push the way you think, or whitewash something or censor it because you find it problematic. Just because you think something's problematic doesn't mean somebody else does. And your answer is, oh, I have a vagina. Oh, I'm a powerful woman. It's like, bro, like, nobody gives a shit. Nobody thinks that, first of all. And most of the, what are these people even clapping for? Like, it's just so, she's not even addressing the damn point. Like, I find this way of arguing and debating and defending yourself so immature. Like, somebody goes and criticizes your work or something you said, and you go and attack them personally. Like, this, it's just so childish, man. It's like, I don't even feel like this deserves more being addressed or being entertained, because it's just stupid. Now, the translation of someone's original work, I think, is very important. And I've seen mixed opinions about this, and for the most part, people seem to be leaning on one side, which I tend to lean on too. But here's what I'll say about that. A lot of people are saying, well, we should just get an AI basically to do the translating work, and a lot of people are celebrating AI and replacing people's jobs and stuff like that, and we don't really need these translators and all that. And I will comment on that separately as well, because I have a lot of opinions on that too. But first of all, I will say I do think that the translating work is important, and I don't think that the translation can always be literal. I think there is an art in properly translating the material while also keeping things funny and relevant to an audience that is from that region without pushing some sort of agenda on the audience, which is what's basically happening, and for me at least, it's the main issue. I grew up watching animes mostly in Portuguese in South America while I was growing up. Nowadays, I mostly watch them in Japanese and I just watch them with subtitles. I don't really watch, for the most part, any animes that are translated, to be honest with you. But as a kid, I did, especially because reading subtitles was difficult for me, you know. And I gotta say, the translated works of animes in Brazil in Portuguese, at least for the time, I don't know how they are now because I don't watch them that way anymore, but they were very, very good. And the reason that they were very good is there are jokes, and they do the same thing for American shows, right? It's mainly for American shows. It's not just anime and Japanese shows. There are jokes, especially if you're gonna watch things like, say, Family Guy, The Simpsons, shows that talk a lot about things that only Americans know about, or at least only North Americans understand, like certain stores like Home Depot, like Best Buy, whatever, McDonald's. Like McDonald's, everybody knows, but there are very specific cultural things and topics that people from only that region are going to understand, especially like when it comes to American shows. There are things that those jokes will not land if you're translating them to Portuguese. People are not going to have a clue what you're talking about. Seriously, it's that big of a difference, not just in the culture, but a lot of reference to things that Americans sometimes might think that the entire world knows about. We don't know them and we don't have an equivalent. Over time, I've been seeing that a lot of things have come to Brazil, especially fast food chains and things like that, which I'm sorry, it's a bad example, but it is true. Like, we didn't have Taco Bell, we didn't have KFC. A lot of these things that we didn't have there, now we do, so some of these jokes might land. But at the time, they didn't. So it was really an art for the person who was translating the work to still make some of those jokes funny and relatable to the audience of the culture where they're going to be getting, replayed. And of course, a lot of these jokes were changed for the sake of making sense in Portuguese. And when you try to literally translate them, they just didn't make any sense. So I come from a perspective where I can really appreciate the work that some of these translators do and what they're sometimes trying to do. What I don't appreciate is that back during this time, there wasn't so much this culture of changing things just for the sake of changing them or because they're considered problematic. Like, we weren't translating things, at least when I was growing up, things were not being translated for the sake of, pushing some sort of agenda or, conveying some sort of moral value, or we weren't changing the essence of the thing. We were just still trying to make the joke funny, right? We weren't trying to push anything on the audience. And I think that's the big problem now. We see this on everything, but especially like now, specifically talking about this point, I think, again, the problem with the translated work is not just that it's not a literal translation, is that we are trying to push some sort of worldview or some sort of opinion on the audience with our translation, right? Some sort of joke that pushes some sort of train of thought. And a lot of people, like, they're just trying to watch the damn show and they just want to actually get a legitimate translation for what's going on. And I will say, like, I've been very critical of different animes and things like that. Like, this is an anime channel. If you watch a lot of my anime reviews, I am very critical of animes and different things that I think that shouldn't be there, or I don't agree with them, or I think they're weird. I think one that I did I was very critical towards the work, even though I really enjoyed it, was Made in Abyss. That's one that I really gave my opinion on, and a lot of it was negative, even though I really like the show. I will call out things that I don't like, right? So I'll be the first to say there are criticisms to jokes and, things that they show, or things that are honestly just I find weird, and I don't have a problem saying it or criticizing it. However, when you are changing things for the sake of censorship, that's when I have a really big problem with it. All these things that I've ever criticized on animes that I've watched or different shows, none of them I would change them for the sake of censorship or to fit what I think is not weird or what I don't like, right? I am perfectly within my right, and I think it's important for us to criticize things that we think are weird or that we don't like or that are out of place. I'm perfectly fine doing that. But I've never advocated, and I will never advocate, for things to be straight up censored. I think that us as consumers, we as the consumer, we need to have the discernment to know and, decide for ourselves what we think is gross or not, or what we think is weird or isn't, or if something's worth watching, even though there are some of the things that we might not like or agree with. Because just because I find certain things weird, just because I find certain things repulsive, or, I don't agree with the message, or I don't agree with XYZ, doesn't mean that my neighbor will feel the same way. And for me to take away from what he enjoys just to push my view on it and censor it and change it completely so he can't enjoy the work the way it was intended to be enjoyed, that's not fair. Not only that's not fair, I think it's authoritarian. And this is a type of worldview that I really don't like. Like, you can have the view that you want. You can think about different subjects exactly the way you want. The problem, again, is when you start changing shit for the sake of just changing it and appealing and appeasing your worldview of things or what you find problematic, you are taking away from the experience of other people. I don't think that's fair. Even if I might agree with some of those things or not, I would never advocate for censoring them. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about this country is, you're allowed to say dumb shit if you want, right? Like, you're allowed to have the freedom of expression. Our artists and artists of the world need to be able to express things the way they want. And then it's up to you as a consumer if you want to watch it or not. Now, I've been seeing a lot of people on the last point here hailing this whole, like, yeah, I'm glad that AI is going to replace all these people. I'm glad that AI is coming and it's taking their jobs. Oh, we don't need them. AI. Okay, so while I am very interested and fascinated by the AI conversation as well, and I think it's very cool, it's funny and it's good that they're taking their jobs until they take yours, okay? That's what I'll say. I'm never going to be happy that anybody's losing their job because of AI. And that's a whole conversation of its own, but if you've studied the Industrial Revolution, pretty soon, man, everything that you think is unique, as AI becomes more and more complex, you will be replaced too. So today is the translator, tomorrow it's going to be you. So I don't think this is a good thing. And, we can get into a whole subject of what's going to happen, after that. Like, Elon likes to talk about, AI taking over and destroying us or whatever. And, some people like to make it seem that it's going to turn into a Terminator movie or I Am Robot. I think that way before that's a problem, the main problem is just going to be people losing their jobs and civil unrest. Like, this is not a good thing. Like, AI is great. It has its functions and all that. But I'm talking specifically the issue of replacing people's jobs. That's a huge issue. And if you think that, oh, well, then that just means that nobody's going to have to work anymore and, the government's going to take care of you and nobody's going to have to do anything. You'll be able to just enjoy your hobbies. Like, that sounds beautiful. I really hope it is that way. But something tells me that that's not going to be the case. Something tells me that it's just going to be unrest, nobody having anything, and just wars, and it's not going to be pretty. And I don't really want to get into that subject. But again, just to reiterate, don't be celebrating other people losing their jobs just because you don't like them. Just replace that person. Like, how about we just get translators who aren't biased about their opinions? How about we get translators that are actually trying to translate the work, and if they are changing a joke, not because it's insensitive, but because it doesn't make sense in that language, try to adapt it while capturing the essence of the original joke. Not completely whitewashing it or getting rid of it for the sake of it being insensitive in your culture or it being weird or you disagreeing with the message. That's the problem. I don't think we need to replace all these people with like AI. We just need to replace them with better people, right? I think we just need to condemn how the internet has been doing. I agree with Asmongold. I agree with a lot of people talking about this. We need to condemn the people doing this. I don't know that they need to be replaced by AI. Because there is an art to what they're doing, believe it or not. And again, going back to my experience, I firsthand observed this art a lot as somebody who wasn't a native English speaker. Mostly my first language is Portuguese, so I saw the art firsthand of what beautiful translation work can do and how it can still make a show funny that would make no sense in the original language to that audience that's watching it now. So there is an art to that. That's my opinion.